Welcome back into the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. With me is Russ Hodges. We are here to cover all things TCU sports, coming off another TCU football come-from-behind victory. Second half defensive dominance. TCU offense comes back, scores a bunch of straight points in a row. We got TCU 38, Kansas State 28 last Saturday night in Amon G. Carter Stadium. Russ, how are you feeling?
I'm good, man. Went out and watched the game with my cousin, her husband. Just shot the breeze for a little bit, watching football pretty much all day. And getting through the gauntlet. I mean, all these ranked teams, 4 in a row. First time in program history to get through all these games. Continuing to stay healthy for the most part. And looking ahead, there's no weeks off in the Big 12, but some I guess easier matchups you could say coming up, and it's an awesome feeling. I mean, number 7 in the country, and college football playoff rankings are going to be right around the corner. So really excited to see if TCU can keep this up, and when those rankings come out, where the Frogs are going to fall.
Yeah, exciting times. I mean, 7-0, 7 in the country. I don't know if we could have ever imagined being in this position coming into the season. So it does feel a little bit like everything going forward is gravy, but now that we're here, now we want it. Now we want it all, and every game it's going to feel like the biggest game of the season in TCU football history, because if you go forward with continue this undefeated season, can continue to be something special. So let's jump into the happenings of the game, and really, I guess, just a little bit of a tale of two halves with a middle eight in between that TCU really dominated, that flipped the game at the end of the first half, going into halftime, and then coming out of halftime as well. TCU opens the game with a quick defensive 3-and-out. Kansas State quarterback Adrian Martinez's only series of the game. He comes in, turns out he was perhaps a little banged up coming into the game. He gets tackled on a run attempting a first down, does not pick up the first down, and that's the last play of his evening. We will talk more about the injury rhetoric that's going around TCU football and kind of what the national media is saying on some of that stuff here in a little bit. But, from that first series, it looked like, okay, this game plan is set. This is what TCU is going to do. They're going to be able to have eyes on Martinez, able to slow down what this offense wants to do, what it plans to do with this Adrian Martinez-led offense. And things looked up from there. It didn't turn out that way the rest of the first half, but I guess, Russ, anything on how are we feeling early in this game?
Yeah, I think, TCU coming out defensively, executing the game plan, coming in that between Adrian Martinez and Deuce Vaughn, that Kansas State is going to run the ball quite a bit. And it's unfortunate for the Wildcats that Martinez goes out after that first series, but then Will Howard, who has had some success against TCU in the past, comes in and
Horned Frog killer for sure.
Is coming in, lighting it up, making some great throws. The touchdown pass in the end zone to tie the game, where Josh Newton did about everything he could on that play. It was much like the John Paul Richardson touchdown, where he's getting mossed, but it's not his fault. These guys are making great plays, and Will Howard just came in and was executing a different kind of offense that I think TCU was really thrown through the spin cycle defensively. And I think there was some criticism after the game about TCU's inability to adjust and falling behind, having to come back against the backup quarterback. But, Will Howard's not some true freshman who hasn't played. He's played for a couple of years now, and I think the level of success that he's had is irrelevant because the game plan, at least for K-State offensively, they can't run the same kind of offense for Will Howard as they would for Adrian Martinez. So you saw more conventional runs for Deuce Vaughn. You saw a lot more passing plays, and for TCU defensively to come in, it's almost like TCU imagine you spend all week doing homework to prepare for the ACT, and then you show up on Saturday with your number 2 pencils and your calculator and your bottle of water, a snack, you're ready to go, and then the proctor comes out and says, all right, SAT time, guys, who's ready to go? And you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I'm studying for. I'm studying for a different test. So I think the second half we saw TCU make that adjustment, but in the first half it was a huge struggle to adjust on the fly, and I think that's where Kansas State was able to take advantage.
Yeah, definitely. That passing game was really working for Will Howard and for the Wildcats, and they were able to scheme up linebackers onto wide receivers and onto Deuce Vaughn in a way that probably it wasn't going to be the plan with Martinez as the quarterback. So the players talked about that after the game, about how there were some bad spots that everybody was put in. Just there was a little bit of being put on the back foot and having to take that blow. And certainly Will Howard delivered those hits. I mean, he was tearing it up. You mentioned the Newton play. I mean, I thought for sure that was an interception. I think everyone in the Carter was ready to rise on their feet. And for that Kansas State receiver to come away with that was an incredible play, and nothing on Newton there. It's unfortunate for him that 2 weeks in a row he kind of gets mossed like that, but I'm not concerned with his performance at all. I think it is concerning that it's possible for a passer even of Will Howard's talent to be able to hit these receivers, and for the scheme to get guys open the way that they were able to there in the first half. And I think going forward, TCU will only face better passing offenses. I mean, starting with West Virginia this week, but certainly Texas and Texas Tech and Baylor will all have quarterbacks capable of hitting those big plays. So something certainly to watch, but without question, that defense was able to make the adjustment and come out of halftime. And really the final 8-9 minutes of the half, very similar to last week against Oklahoma State, where that was it. That was the end of the scoring. That was the end of anything that the offense was going to actually do for Kansas State, where once Gillespie has that plan adjustment in place, it seems like they're able to make it work. And I don't know if that's his scheme or the guys settling into the roles or a bit of both. But everybody, all the TCU fans online were very, and rightfully so, very freaked out in the first half. And you go down 3 scores and you get nervous, but clearly this team has the moxie and has the ability to bounce back from that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think TCU being able to come out and make an adjustment in the second half, Deuce Vaughn only finished with 12 carries in the game. So I was a little surprised that they, even with Will Howard in the game, I'm a little surprised that they, I don't want to say they abandoned the run, because I don't think they did, but they started to go away from it quite a bit. Maybe because Will Howard was having a lot of success in the first half, so you can't really blame them for that. But a little surprised that Deuce didn't get more involved in the second half. But for TCU, once again, offensively, the offensive line getting off the football. Kenray Miller finished with 153 yards. They ran the ball well all game, and I thought that was huge, especially at the end of the first half and the start of the second half. You're able to score a couple touchdowns. Max Duggan hits Jared Wiley on the play action. Um, Frogs come out first drive of the third quarter, and they're able to score, make it a 4-point game, and was really encouraged to see that. Obviously, TCU coming out to start the season has had a lot of fast starts, not so much over these last couple games, but in the second half, really happy to see not only the defense adjust, but the offense really, excluding the fourth down stop that Kansas State had late in the game, didn't seem to really struggle too much. They ran the ball effectively, and TCU was able to hit some big plays. Jared Wiley having his best game of the season. Could be a guy that gets more involved moving forward just with his size. I mean, for
Such a
at
weapon.
6'7", his catch radius is going to be really difficult for teams over the middle of the field and in the red zone to be able to stop that, because you can get him the ball in a variety of different ways. You can get him moving off the line of scrimmage. He's talented enough to run routes as well. They had him lining up in the slot, so a really versatile player, and really exciting to see him. Again, another transfer. We've talked about how the transfers have come in and made a variety of different impacts. Jaquarius Spivey was kind of that hybrid receiver tight end that TCU had on the depth chart at the start of the year, but Jared Wiley seems like he's starting to kind of take over that role, and I'm really interested to see how the Frogs use him moving forward.
Yeah, that play that was towards the end of the half that scored the touchdown to Wiley was just a really brilliant just scheme up from Garrett Riley. Clearly, play action, motion in the backfield, and just nobody was watching Wiley. He was there standing in the middle of the back of the end zone, ready to catch that. And that's just it's not one of those our guys are better than your guys' play. It's our play is better than your play. And so I don't know how many of those kind of situations TCU has had the last few years. So that's the kind of thing that is really encouraging for this team. Of that's an aspect to this Horned Frog squad that we haven't really seen. Going back to even before the defensive woes, the scoring started right off the bat with Darius Davis just turning on the speed burners on kind of a mid-range crosser that he takes, and looked like, this might be a 18-yard gain, 25-yard gain, and he just runs past everybody. I mean, these are high-level Power 5 Division I defensive backs, and he just sprints right past him. I think the sports stat on it, on the analytics, had it over 20 miles an hour on the run. Just incredible athleticism from Darius Davis.
Yeah, and offensively for TCU, Quentin Johnston has been the guy these last couple games, and of course another solid game against Kansas State. I believe he had 4 catches, 74 yards, and a touch, 4 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. But for this offense that has really spread the ball around as the season has moved forward, it's been nice to see other players be able to step up and make those big home run type plays when it's been necessary. You look at Darius Davis and SMU in the game against Kansas State. We've seen Tay Barber step up and make phenomenal catches. Savion Williams has had his moments, and then Jared Wiley this past weekend. So it's really important for that core of skill players to continue to improve and develop, so that it's not just Quentin Johnston every single game. And could it very well be Quentin Johnston every single game? Sure. But your offense becomes so one-dimensional that way when a team can essentially line up, even if you have 3 guys, 4 guys, even 5 guys out wide, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to shadow number 1, we're going to double number 1 because the ball's going his way. To see Darius Davis and Jared Wiley and these other receivers like Savion Williams and Tay Barber be able to make, even if it's only a couple catches, those significant plays, scoring plays, Uh, Long gains, extending drives is only going to make this pass attack much more potent as the year goes on. Hey man, real quick, can you hear me? Yeah, I think you might be muted. Can you try talking real quick?
Oh no. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me
Yeah, I
now?
hear you now.
Shoot. Okay, well, all of that was incredible analysis, and I'm sorry you missed it, and we're just going to have to move on. Um, uh, I was talking about Quentin Johnston. Did you hear any of the Quentin Johnston stuff?
I did not know.
Okay, back to that. I was saying, he actually had kind of a rough game outside of his 55-yard touchdown catch there in the second half, where he had a couple that kind of hit him in the hands, or maybe drops, maybe tough plays. But like you were saying, you're able to have a not 100% perfect game from Quentin Johnston, and the other guys come out and really step up. And where I was going to next was the drive that came out of the second half. That on that drive, the Frogs go 77 yards on like 10 or 11 plays, take 6+ minutes off the clock, and really, even though they were still trailing after scoring there, it felt like TCU had taken control back of the game, and the crowd was just exploding, and it felt like, I know momentum's not real, but all the momentum was on TCU's side at that point.
Yeah, coming out and scoring on that first drive of the third quarter was huge. I almost think that was a necessity, even though they got the field goal before halftime. I believe it was 28-17. To come out and get the ball, I believe, to start the third quarter and score. And again, you got to credit TCU's ability to run the ball. Anytime you can take that much time off the clock and finish with 6 points, I don't think you can really draw it up much better than that. So TCU offensively, just it's very consistent right now in terms of overall production. Scoring has been very consistent. The rushing attack has been consistent. Amari DiMercato had some nice runs yesterday, or on Saturday, and passing the ball. Max Duggan had some throws that he probably wishes he could have had back. Some throws where maybe he rushed it, his mechanics were a little off, but um, overall a pretty solid game from him, and mistake-free football from TCU in terms of not throwing interceptions, not fumbling the ball away. Special teams was solid, not giving opponents extra possessions by muffing kicks or conceding onside kicks. So really just kind of minor things that TCU's got to clean up. And I think Johnny Hodges actually said it best after the game, where he said, we still haven't put together 4 full quarters of football yet this year. And you look at that as just the players are trying to be humble and they know they can do things better. But I completely agree with that because I think you can look at every game and see areas where TCU hasn't played its best and mistakes have been made. But honestly, that's been the case with a lot of teams in college football, especially teams that are in the top 10. I mean, Georgia almost lost to Missouri. Alabama has had a pair of close calls this year against Texas A&M and Texas. And then,
Alabama almost lost to two like really rough games there with Texas and Texas A&M. Those would have been really embarrassing to have had to lose to Texas or Texas A&M.
And Clemson, escaping Syracuse, they benched DJ Uiagalelei. And look, no team is, I guess, no team is excluded from bad play once in a while. But it's really encouraging to see that these players, even at 7-0, even at 4-0 in the Big 12, the only team unbeaten in the Big 12, still first in the standings, they know they can do better and they know they can do more. And it's really encouraging to see that also because they just went through a pretty hellish schedule when you consider it's Oklahoma, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State in consecutive games. So a well-earned historic stretch of wins for TCU, and you just hope that they continue to play with that chip on their shoulder and that belief that they still have more to do and more to prove as they move forward.
Yeah, and to the point of, being able to play not perfect and still come out with the win, I think it's the things where they don't let bad mistakes, big mistakes happen, but then the small mistakes do not snowball into larger mistakes. I think, Max took some sacks in this game that he really probably shouldn't happen. I mean, he's just holding on to the ball too long, or situations where he's getting pressured and has got to get the ball away, and ends up he kind of scrambles away and loses more yardage than he needed to. I mean, there were some, 2nd and 25s and 3rd and 17 in particular on that drive to start the second half where, that's probably just a run a draw play and kick a field goal and move on with your day. But they hit that screen pass to Kendre Miller and he breaks it up the field. It's just a huge play in the game to keep that drive alive. And then again, later in that drive, where he scores the touchdown is a 4th down and 1 from the 2-yard line, and he bullies his way into the end zone. So that's a case where a penalty here or a sack there or a missed incompletion. Another one, Max had a wide open Tay Barber that would have picked up a first down. Somewhere in that bad stretch in the first half where there was probably like 5 minutes of game time that was just like touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, something like that. And there was plays like that in that stretch where, that's lesser teams. That's it. That's the end of it. So, impressive to see that stuff come through. And yeah, I mean, the special teams, I'll say I was pretty dubious of the wind being a factor in this game. That was a lot of talk to me. I didn't know that was going to play too much, and really in the fact of the over under on the score, I didn't think it should have. This was by far the lowest under. Like the total score on the game was like 54, so that clearly came through. But it definitely did affect the way that the game was being played, and particularly on special teams where. Some of those Jordy Sandy punts into the wind, it looked like they were boomers, and then it was, they'd get caught up there and drop for like a 30-yard punt, which is not what you want, but not terrible. Mm-hmm. But still, it was that kind of thing. And Kansas State really ended up being kind of susceptible to it. The coaching decision that seemed most curious there was there in the second half, they're deep into TCU territory, about 25-yard line, and they've got about a 4th and 2. It's the play where Will Howard is scrambling for a first down and gets tackled and gets hobbled a bit and has to come off the field. And instead of attempting a 4th down conversion there with Deuce Vaughn and a backup quarterback, they kick that field goal into the wind, like a 45-yard field goal, into that terrible wind. And Hypnotoad came to the rescue as well in that case. I mean, Hypnotoad got pumped into the stadium at that point, and that poor kicker had no chance once Hypnotoad came out, and also kicking into the wind in a pretty difficult kick anyway. I don't know. I thought that was a curious decision. I suppose it was just because of the quarterback situation where on that one play Howard wasn't going to be able to run it, but 4th and short, you've got this excellent running back and this offensive line. I don't know. I think that's probably one that Chris Kleiman would like to take back and maybe go for in that situation.
Yeah, I think just based on Kansas State's reputation and how they like to play, maybe if it's Oklahoma or Oklahoma State or Texas Tech, they probably go for it there. Maybe even Texas or West Virginia, but Kansas State I've always felt is more conservative when it comes to play calling offensively. So I definitely could see why they settled for the field goal there, but they wind up going 0 for 2 on field goals in the game, and those are things we've talked about on the podcast before about how do you beat top ranked teams, especially on the road. You can't make mistakes like that. Kansas State left 6 points on the board with those 2 missed kicks, and of course it's unfortunate that they had some injuries during the game, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but special teams definitely was a factor in this game, and you brought up the win. I think Jordy Sandy actually had to switch to the rugby style during the game because
keep it low.
It was the only way to keep the ball low, and you hit it right, you're going to get about 10, 15 yards, maybe even up to 20 yards of just the ball bouncing down the field. So just overall, I think there are some things to do better on. It'd be nice to get back to starting fast like TCU has shown it can do, but you really, I think, have to appreciate the adjustments that TCU has shown it can make defensively. This is really 2 or 3 games in a row where the Frogs have made big adjustments on the defensive end in the second half, and offensively they're just continuing to chug along. Like I mentioned before, consistently scoring into the 30s and 40s, consistently running the ball for well over 100, 150 yards a game. Max Duggan is avoiding turnovers. I want to say he's up to 18 or 19 touchdown passes.
Yeah, I think
season.
It's 19-1.
19-1, yeah, and his completion percentage continues to improve. And again, we're at the point now where it's little things. It's not huge areas of this football team that are bad or need improvement. It's just marginal tweaks. Like you mentioned, Max had a couple sacks he probably could have avoided if he throws the ball away, and that's been kind of a bugaboo of his throughout his career, is just kind of settling in the pocket for a little too long. And I know we've talked about that on the podcast before, but just little tweaks that I think those kinds of flaws are less glaring against lesser football teams. So I'm interested to see, of course, starting with West Virginia coming up, and then you have Iowa State, you have Texas Tech, Baylor. These are all unranked teams that have had their highs and their lows. So you want to see, are these flaws still glaring or even more glaring against those kinds of teams, or are they only things that get, I guess, exposed against higher levels of play? But overall, I mean, again, I don't think you could be any more pleased if you were Sonny Dykes and the coaching staff about what the team has accomplished so far. And you got to get buckled in for another tough one coming up in Morgantown. It's always a very difficult place to play. TCU West Virginia have had some thrilling matchups over these last several years. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. And so before we jump into this next week's game, Saturday morning from Morgantown, let's talk a little bit about, we're at this point over halfway through the season. TCU's undefeated, top 10, playoff rankings coming out soon. What's the media, what's the national view of TCU? It's the kind of thing that you love to be part of the conversation. It's great. It's the best. It's also kind of the worst, because you get a lot of people saying things that, we as TCU fans, we're very in the weeds on everything that TCU is up to. And so we hear things that aren't necessarily correct about TCU or fair about the Horned Frogs schedule or play. And I know that the TCU fan base is often one to take that and run with it. I'm not excluded from that. So, some of the things that have come up in the last week or so of the way people are discussing TCU's chances going forward. The first thing that's pretty bothersome on just like on a base level is the stuff about injuries. So the one Oklahoma State account that kind of blew up this week that had the comment about TCU, where they said something like, "Oh, are they benefiting from injury luck, or is it something more?" Like wink, wink, hint, hint. Are these dirty players? And to be fair, some high level national writers came to the defense there of like, this guy's a goon and this statement's crazy. But that's the kind of thing that people are seeing that, and it will be used. This is going to be a talking point for the rest of the season that people will use against TCU, and I can very well see, that the College Football Playoff Committee using that when they start talking about TCU, when those rankings come out. So, yes, it's also the kind of thing you got to dig into it deeper. So, Dylan Gabriel gets hurt against TCU. We talked about it when it happened. Clearly a penalty, clearly a targeting, players ejected, and it's unfortunate that he's injured. But at the time, TCU was up, like 28 points, 21 points?
I want to say it was 17-0. So the game was very well in TCU's hands when
TCU was already
Gabriel
running
went out,
away
yeah.
with that game. So it's and so maybe Gabriel storms back and there's a huge comeback, but there was nothing the rest of that game to suggest that the Oklahoma defense was ever going to stop TCU from scoring. So throw that one however you feel. And we talked about it with this Kansas State game of clearly when TCU has the preparation on these running quarterbacks, there's a level of kind of shutdown nature to it. I mean, Jalen Daniels had done nothing up to the point. Obviously, he had the fumble at the goal line, which was a big play. If they score there, that maybe changes things. But he was not playing well before he got injured in a routine football play where he gets tackled and he gets hurt. And Bean comes in and plays very well. The media people are also doing the same thing about Spencer Sanders. Like, Spencer Sanders was hobbled, so TCU really benefited from that. Well, Spencer Sanders went out the next week and beat Texas. Yeah. Meanwhile, everybody's like, oh, Texas, could 3-loss Texas make the playoff? Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
I think it's everybody's trying to use what they want to make the argument that they want to make, and for a lot of people, it's to take down TCU, which that's the way we see things as TCU fans. But I think this is a narrative we're going to continue to see.
Yeah, and I think what's discouraging is TCU just beat 4 ranked teams in a row. And the first thing that people are talking about is not the fact that TCU just beat four ranked teams in a row. Because it doesn't matter if you're playing in the SEC or the ACC or the Big 10, Big 12, wherever. You don't beat four ranked teams in a row very often. You might beat two in a row, three in a row. I mean, I can't remember in recent history the last time a team knocked off four ranked opponents in a row. Maybe it was recently and I just don't know about it, but
yeah, I think it's happened like 3 times ever. It's like
it's rare.
I think it's happened once ever in the Big 12 before TCU did.
Yeah, it's rare, and this is it's a team game. The TCU football team beat the Kansas State football team. TCU beat the Oklahoma football team. This is a roster made up of near 100 guys that beat another team with nearly 100 guys on it, and I cringe when I read all of these arguments and I think some people are doing it to troll because it is social media and that's how people are. But I also believe from some of the things that I've read that there are some that genuinely believe that TCU is playing dirty football. That doesn't sit well with me. The Jamoy Hodge hit on Dylan Gabriel, he was penalized. He was kicked out of the game. They showed him on the sideline after the game or during the game. I don't believe that was intentionally a player trying
distraught.
To make a dirty play.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And for Jalen Daniels to be tackled and he's got a 250-pound linebacker landing on his shoulder, you see these kinds of plays happening in the NFL very frequently. In college football, they happen very frequently. Caleb Fox tackles Will Howard. You got a 300-pound defensive lineman landing on your shoulder. Yeah, there's a chance you're probably going to get dinged up or hurt in that situation. I don't think TCU is going out of its way to injure anybody, and I think anybody who's claiming that, a lot of people are making these claims with zero evidence, and I think that's what really, in the words of Peter Griffin, grinds my gears when I see things like that. And again, I know that's just the nature of social media where people can make a lot of those claims baselessly with no evidence, but overall, just what sticks out to me is college football playoff rankings are going to be coming out very soon. You look at TCU's resume, I know they're number 7 in the AP poll right now, but how many teams ranked above TCU have wins over 4 ranked opponents already? I think Tennessee might have 3 or 4, but they objectively, you look at just purely based off resumes, I think TCU has one of the best, if not the best, resumes in all of college football. And instead of talking about the fact that TCU's beaten 4 ranked opponents and being able to overcome some adversity, it's, oh, well, Spencer Sanders wasn't 100%. Oh, well, Jalen Daniels got hurt. Well, guess what? Max Duggan wasn't even supposed to start. He was the backup quarterback at the start of the year, and he's taken over this team and is playing the best football of his career. I mean, it's college football. Crazy things happen. And Spencer Sanders comes out and hangs 41 on Texas. He looked pretty good in that game. Oklahoma, they get Dylan Gabriel. They score 52 points against Kansas. I mean, that's a good football team that was getting their butts kicked well before he went out against TCU. So I think people need to, anybody who's making those claims about TCU playing dirty football, getting lucky, going up against teams where quarterbacks aren't 100%, injuries are a part of the game. Is it unfortunate that it's happening at an important position? Sure. But this is a game where you have 11 guys on one side and you have 11 guys on the other side. And you have far more guys on each sideline. So I think you have to get over it and move on because there's still plenty of football to play.
Yeah, for sure. And we've probably spent too much time on it. But, you said the piece about Max being the backup. And, that seems to be glossed over, that TCU is beating Spencer Sanders with its backup quarterback. And just because people know who Max Duggan is and he's been around for a long time, that is the case just as much as anything else. But also, in this Kansas State game, Max Duggan took a shot to the head that the player on Kansas State was ejected. And Max Duggan stayed in the game and continued to play. And, nobody is saying, well, Kansas State was just out there trying to hurt Max Duggan. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes in football, people get hit, and it's not always a malicious thing. And I'll also just say on the rankings thing, yeah, the AP voters are very much tied to the way they voted from preseason and on. I mean, nobody is using that same argument. The same AP voters that are using the potentially injured or not 100% quarterbacks against TCU are the ones that are voting Alabama ahead of TCU, despite Alabama having 0 top 25 wins in currently ranked teams, despite Alabama having a loss, and despite Alabama needing a last-minute field goal to defeat Texas's backup quarterback. Right? So, that's not a conversation. Nobody's holding back Alabama for that, and that's just, everybody loves Alabama, and they're great, and they're going to continue being great, and they have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and all of that. But we'll see as the committee uses more resume-based things and not just like, well, I think this person's going to lose eventually. That's the other talking point that it has really kind of bothered me is the Big 12 is so great. We love the Big 12 this year. It's so deep. It's so exciting. These games are great. They're so close. So that means that the winner of the league is going to be obviously not part of the college football playoff. What? Why? Why not? I mean, if what you're saying is, there's all these metrics of like the Big 12 as a complete conference is either first or second with the SEC. Why would its champion not be in the playoff? Mm-hmm. A 2-loss team, you can see that, but there's already this projection that TCU will definitely lose a game, and even when they lose a game, that will eliminate the Frogs from the playoff. And it's, it's hard to not be cynical about it because of what happened in 2014 and what we've seen with the playoff ever since its inception, to believe that to be a true case. But it's also like, we gotta fight the power on that because it's just not, it's not a fair assessment. You can't talk out of both sides there to say this conference is so deep and so good and all the teams are evenly matched and are quality, and then also say it doesn't matter if you win out or come out of that conference with one loss.
Yeah, that's an interesting argument because I think the Big 12 being a round robin type format where every team plays every other team. I personally love that. I don't like how in the Big Ten, the SEC, you play your division and you only play a couple other teams on the other side. The Big 12 to me is a complete conference, but I also believe that I feel like the Big 12, you're going to have a lot of teams that finish, I don't know, 6-6 to 8-4, and you might have a couple teams finish 9-3, 10-2 with the potential for something even greater. Whereas I think in the ACC, SEC, even the Big Ten, you have
definitely the Big
2 or 3 top dogs who are almost certain to go unbeaten or finish with one loss, barring some Category 5 meltdown. So I think that's what makes it more difficult from a team in the Big 12 to make the playoff is just you have, like, some conferences you have here and here. The Big 12 is much more like kind of in the middle, you know what I'm saying? Like you have a lot of really good football teams, and you'll probably wind up with nearly the entire conference bowl eligible, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2. But the potential for the playoff and to finish with one loss, it's going to be so difficult just because you play real competitive games week after week, and you don't have a Rutgers in the Big 12. You don't have a Vanderbilt in the Big 12.
Right, or Kansas, like Kansas has been in the past. That Kansas team doesn't exist
Right,
this year.
correct. And yeah, and that's Kansas has been the pushover. Kansas starts the season 5-0. Iowa State, I know Iowa State's having a rough go of it right now, being 0-4 in the conference, but Iowa State has also
They
lost those
pushed
four
Kansas State.
games.
They pushed Texas.
Yeah,
They,
they've lost those four
they were
games.
right in those games.
Yeah, they've lost those four games by a combined 16 points. So and we've talked about it so many times before. There's no gimmies in the Big 12 like I feel like there are in some of these other Power 5 conferences, and I feel like some of those elite teams benefit from getting the occasional cupcake matchup. Like I think a team like Ohio State or a team like Alabama or a team like Clemson will benefit from that, as opposed to a team
Michigan has played one game against a top 100, top 120 team. I mean, yeah, they beat Penn State at home, and it's pretty questionable about whether Penn State is of top 20 level team actually, but Michigan played probably the worst non-conference schedule in the whole country, playing UConn and Colorado State, and I mean, come on. But it doesn't matter. They're still ranked above TCU, even for what? I don't know. I don't know really where anyone's getting that.
Preseason polls, baby.
It's preseason,
yeah.
Right? So, okay, we've gone way too long on this stuff, but college football playoff ranking comes out Tuesday. Hopefully this game goes well for TCU and we have an interesting result of that to talk about. But frankly, save your emotions, save your time, go do something else. Count your Halloween candy. Just do something else. Don't watch the playoff rankings. Just don't torture yourself. You're going to be mad. It's a television show specifically meant to make you mad and meant to get you fired up online. Just don't do it. So, have some self-care there and don't watch it. But that's Tuesday, November 1st. All right, we'll move on. Let's talk about this game against West Virginia, because I'm on two sides of a coin on this game. I think I am in one hand quite nervous about this West Virginia game. First, just going on the road to Morgantown is a dangerous place to play. We saw it with Baylor earlier this year. We've seen it with TCU many times in the past. That the quality of the teams in the game, maybe you throw out the window, because it's going to be a tough place to play. And there is certainly talent on this West Virginia team, and they are by no means a pushover. The other side of that coin for me is, like we've said, TCU hasn't put together like a 100% great game yet. And it feels like it's coming. And if it happens here in Morgantown, it could be where TCU runs away with it. So I'm conflicted. I'm worried. I'm excited. What are your thoughts here looking forward to the Mountaineers?
Yeah, I think anytime TCU plays a game outside of the state of Texas, I get a little nervous, just because it doesn't happen very frequently. And at least in Morgantown, there have been so many. You go back to 2013, where Gary Patterson rolls the dice. They go for two. They score there. Jaden Oberchrome hitting the walk-off field goal to get a win there. West Virginia's hit a walk-off field goal in Fort Worth to beat TCU. And West Virginia has beaten TCU every season since 2017. And so Neil Brown was unbeaten against Gary Patterson. The Mountaineers have had TCU's number in recent seasons, and they've done it really with just very physical football and real physical defense. The Frogs have struggled big time to score points against West Virginia over the last few years. So I'm intrigued to see whether or not this offense can continue to keep it rolling, and a fast start is going to be key in this game. I think you look at this, a team that's, I think West Virginia's 4-3, maybe 3-4. They're at the bottom of the conference right now, one of the lower spots in the conference, and it's kind of a trap game for TCU coming in and being 7-0, being the number 7 team in the country. Um, it's only going to get more difficult from here as expectations just continue to mount and the wins continue to stack up. And I think any coach will tell you that as you extend that unbeaten streak more and more, it becomes more and more difficult to win. So I'm really curious to see TCU defensively. In the Kansas State game, we saw it. We saw it against Kansas as well when they give up big chunk plays in zone coverage. And between Bryce Ford Wheaton, Caden Prather, Sam James, JT Daniels has turned the ball over quite a bit this year, but he's also experienced and he's capable of having a big game. TCU's got to be able to play some good zone coverage and some good man in this game. It's going to be a big time test for the back five. Bryce Ford Wheaton is, in my opinion, one of the better receivers in the Big 12. This is a team that its season's kind of on life support right now. West Virginia has shown some flashes, beating Baylor, hanging 43 points on Baylor, playing a real competitive game against Pittsburgh at the very start of the season, but they've also had some stinkers. So if there was any better opportunity to get the season back on track for West Virginia, it would be this weekend against TCU. For a team and a coach who could very well be competing for his job this year in Neil Brown. So do not fall for the trap. That's my advice to TCU for whatever it's worth. For me,
Yeah, don't take the cheese, all of that. Yeah, and the players and coaches have done a good job, at least with their words. What they say, that they're keeping their focus and they're not really worrying about all those outside, that whole rant we just went on about the playoff. They're not worried about any of that stuff. They're not listening to that. They don't care about it. They don't care about rankings. They don't care about what bowl they're going to, any of that stuff. That's the message. And I think they're doing a good job with that, and the coaching staff is doing a really good job of keeping them focused. But it, like you said, it's only going to keep getting harder, and the outside forces are going to keep getting louder and louder, and the pressure is going to keep squeezing tighter and tighter. And you just have to try to not slip up. And part of what worries me on this team, this West Virginia team, is JT Daniels is a good passing quarterback. He's quite good. He's a rich man's Will Howard. He has the ability, and certainly the playmakers for West Virginia, I would say, outside of the running back position, are better than Kansas State's. So Daniels is not the type to run around and do crazy things with his legs, but his passing skill is quite high. And, everybody knows his story coming out as a big 5-star quarterback and has to transfer a couple times and gets usurped. But he has the ability to put it together. And if he goes on a run without making that bad mistake like he did against Pitt, like he did against Kansas, they would have won both of those games if he doesn't make that one mistake. Or one, I think in the Pitt game it was Ford Wheaton, it kind of bounced off his helmet and it was returned for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say I've got concerns, and I'm gonna be nervous pacing watching this game, most definitely. And that West Virginia defense also has some playmakers too. I mean, there's still a Stills brother or cousin or nephew or son somewhere playing on this this West Virginia team. Feels like there's been a Stills at West Virginia for 20 years, or at least since 12, since we've been in the conference. It feels like, but I think TCU will have opportunities to score. And I think the TCU defense is well positioned to stop West Virginia's offense, but we have seen these kind of precision passing, pocket passing quarterbacks do some work against TCU, and the 3-3-5 where you're putting a lot of if you were putting those TCU linebackers in coverage situations, it really can get them crossed up. That's just not their forte. That's not what they're there to do. And so when you're forced to play in that way, it could lead to some problems on the defensive end. Anything else on West Virginia? What other thoughts you have?
You know what? I think we pretty much covered everything. I wouldn't
We
be
ready
surprised
for our
if,
prediction?
yeah, we can get into the predictions real quick. I was just kind of thinking, I believe TCU was ranked number 7 the year Jaden Oberkrom hit the walk-off field goal to win that game by 1 point. And I think you could very well see a similar situation in this game where someone might need to make some key kicks. Griffin Kell has been, again, really solid on field goals this year. And I think anytime you have that extra weapon in your pocket, especially when you're playing on the road in Morgantown, which is a difficult place to play, knowing that you can take the 3 points when you need it is going to help the offense. Of course, you'd like to see the offense finish off as many drives with 6 as you can, but I feel like I say this practically every week, but special teams has been a low-key strength for this TCU team. Coverage has been pretty solid on punts, on kickoffs, and Jordy Sandy, Griffin Kell have both done a really nice job there. We know Darius Davis is capable of making a play. Really happy to see him bounce back after a pretty tough game recently against Oklahoma State. So, yeah, I think this could, at least by my prediction, I guess we'll go ahead and just jump into it right now. TCU is a 7.5-point favorite. The total is 69 points. I have been fairly conservative with my predictions throughout the season, but I am, again, going to pick the Frogs to cover the spread like I do every week. I think this might be the game TCU finally cuts loose and breaks it open. Part of me also thinks that this could be a pretty tight game, but I think West Virginia's had too many stinkers this year, and I think TCU is going to respond after a couple weeks where there have been some pretty slow starts. I think TCU is going to come out and really dominate this first half. So my score prediction is going to be TCU 45, West Virginia 24. Frogs play a really, really good first half. They walk out of Morgantown 8-0 going into the first unveiling of the playoff rankings.
I love it. I think that's I like it. I think it's a likely possibility. I think of the percentages, that's probably in the higher percentages chances of happening. I think what you say, this is the one where it breaks open. I'm being a little more conservative in my thought here. I think this is still a relatively tight game that TCU holds to a 35-28 final score. So we go under the total of 69. TCU does not cover a 7.5-point spread. Just playing in that road atmosphere, I think maybe the early game actually makes it better for TCU. You don't have those fans getting riled up for all day. Unless they spend all Friday night into an early 11. I don't know how it works in West Virginia. Maybe they're pretty crazy out there, I guess. But I think in any case, it's a tough place to play, and West Virginia is able to contain some of the things that Max Duggan does. But I see Kendre Miller getting some loose again for like the third or fourth straight week where he's just a dominant superstar. And TCU comes away with a touchdown victory. And then, yes, from there, TCU, after all of the other top teams lose in their games that they're supposed to win this week, just go ahead and put TCU in the top two in that playoff ranking. Let's see that. Okay, that's too far. That's not going to happen. All right, so we've already hit an hour here. Let's see. Let's just look at ahead to the Big 12 this week. What's on the slate? It's a really interesting slate of games that I think, and really nationally, I think there's a perception that the games this week are a little one-sided or kind of but I could see a lot of chaos happening this week because of that, just because there's these games where good teams are really expected to kind of run away with things, and when you get a week like that, you tend to see the opposite happen. You tend to see some chaos, and hopefully TCU doesn't get caught up in that chaos. But around the Big 12, we've got Oklahoma is a 1-point favorite at Iowa State. Oklahoma State is on the road at Kansas State, and the Wildcats are actually a 1.5-point favorite over the Cowboys. And Baylor is in Lubbock, and the Red Raiders are 2.5-point favorites over the Bears. Just on my thoughts on the Oklahoma-Iowa State game, I think Oklahoma might be back, and Iowa State continues to get this respect from whatever computers and odds makers are spitting out numbers. And I think Oklahoma definitely wins in Ames and definitely wins by more than 1 point. So I would say Oklahoma covers that one.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma will win this game. Just based off of the way Iowa State has played this season on the defensive end, they've tied down some pretty potent offenses with some pretty good skill players. So, not to say Oklahoma's going to win by 3 points. I think Oklahoma's capable of winning this game by at least a touchdown or two. But I could see the score being more for at least for Oklahoma, maybe in the 20s. Low 30s max, but I really want to pick Iowa State. I just don't feel like I can. Not this time with Dylan Gabriel back healthy. The way that offense looked against Kansas, hanging 52 points. I think with him back there, Oklahoma is a completely different team, and I know they've struggled on the defensive end, but no team in the Big 12 this season, I think, has shot itself more in the foot than the Cyclones. So I'll go with Oklahoma.
Yeah, and this Cowboys-Wildcats game is a super important game in the Big 12 race. I mean, the winner of this game will be kind of back in line to make it to Arlington for the conference championship game, and really get a leg up now that both teams have lost to TCU. Both teams, that's right now their only loss in conference. So it's a big opportunity. I think, it's one that Kansas State kind of has to win to keep pace, because next up they still have Texas on the schedule, where Oklahoma State has already taken down the Longhorns. So I think Kansas State has to come out and win this game, but without Adrian Martinez, maybe that doesn't happen. I don't know. This line being what it is, even with it pretty clear that Will Howard's going to be the quarterback, I think it's a pretty strong nod to everything that Kansas State does and to what Will Howard does. I think Kansas State can come out and take this game just as a really motivated team. They probably feel like should have won against TCU, where Oklahoma State is kind of riding high still off of taking down the Longhorns.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I feel like TCU and Oklahoma State right now are the two best teams in the Big 12. I think Kansas, if they can get Jalen Daniels back at some point, they can make a run. Oklahoma's capable of making a run. Kansas State, I think, is a very good team, but I liked what I saw from Oklahoma State defensively against the Longhorns. Quinn Ewers really struggled in that game. The Cowboys made some huge plays on defense late to seal it. So I like Oklahoma State here. I'm going to take the Cowboys.
Awesome. And then, the Baylor at Texas Tech, just like the odds makers have loved Iowa State, they have really disliked Baylor. I think Baylor goes in there and wins this game. Texas Tech is obviously way ramped up for their game against the Horned Frogs next week. Their official Twitter account is already tweeting, trash talk and all of that. I think they're just they're already looking ahead. They do not care about this game. They don't care if they win. They're trying to come out healthy and come into Fort Worth and ruin TCU's season. That is all that matters going forward for Texas Tech. And frankly, if they have a season that includes a win over Texas and a win over TCU, that's a successful season no matter what else happens. So I understand the position there, and I think they're not ready for Baylor, and Baylor comes and takes it to them.
This is a game where I wish I could pick neither team because I'm not a fan of either team, but Texas Tech's offense is dangerous. I mean, it doesn't seem to matter who they plug in at quarterback. They rack up yards like no other. Their passing attack is one of the best in the Big 12. I know they don't run the ball too much, but Taj Brooks did have a nice game this past weekend, and I haven't watched Baylor enough. I don't really know what to make of Baylor at this point. Kind of like West Virginia, where they've had some really nice moments and then some complete duds thrown in there as well. And for a team under Dave Aranda, you wouldn't think would struggle a whole lot on the defensive end, at times has really struggled. And I think they're going to struggle against a really potent Texas Tech passing attack. So I'm going to take the Red Raiders.
Yeah, and for Baylor, it's the kind of thing where their schedule has made them look worse. I mean, they went and lost to BYU, who then has gone and lost to Oregon and Notre Dame in pretty bad fashion, and lost to West Virginia, who looked just awful against Texas Tech. So can definitely see why the Raiders are favored here. And yeah, like you say, who knows what they're up to right now in Waco. All right, let's just close it with a couple of these quick news items just to follow up on TCU Soccer. In the last week since we last talked, took a loss, its first loss in Big 12 play against Oklahoma on the road, and then went on the road to Waco and defeated Baylor. Always a good thing. 1-2-0 there. Regular season finale is Thursday night, so if you're downloading and listening to this as soon as it comes up, go out tonight, Thursday night, to Garvey Rosenthal and go see the Horned Frog ladies soccer team take on the Red Raiders in the regular season finale. Still with a chance to take a regular season share of the Big 12 title ahead of next week's Big 12 conference tournament. Also, we're getting really close to basketball season. We've been getting ready for the hype. The hype is real, and TCU will this Sunday have an exhibition and then start the season November 7th against Arkansas Pine Bluff. More to come. You'll be seeing a bunch of preview stuff coming from us on frogsofwar.com for basketball season, so we'll be covering that certainly in full as well. Let's see, anything you wanted to go back to, Russ, since we're over an hour here, but anything else we didn't touch on that we want to say?
You know what? I think we pretty much just about covered it, and I'm not going to lie. I think my phone is on probably 3% battery, so if we go any longer, you might see a black screen pop up, and you might just start talking to yourself.
All right. Well, I was doing that on mute earlier, apparently. So it's all right. It's all right. Yeah. Well, let's get out of here. Let's get your phone plugged in. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for hanging with us at frogsofwar.com and on Twitter, Facebook. Follow us everywhere. Download and subscribe to this podcast. we hope you enjoy all that we're putting out there, and this podcast as well. Follow us on YouTube. You can see our lovely faces there. And join us in the comment section for the game thread on Saturday. It's a lively conversation, and all the roller coaster of emotions as we go through these games. Certainly, it's been that roller coaster, no doubt, the last 2 weeks. It's a fun time, and it's fun. It'll be fun to go back and look at those, kind of like, oh man, here's what we were thinking at different parts of the season. So anyway, that's all we've got this week, and thanks for listening. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.